Hi. Hello, everybody. I would kindly ask you to take your seats so we can slowly begin with the second panel discussion. And I would just ask the doors to be closed, please. So, hello, everybody. I hope you had a nice break and that you came back refreshed. I am Iman Beladem, and I will be moderating today's panel. Today, by my side, we have Franz Terihati, a representative from Albania. He comes from Center for Legal Empowerment, which is a community-based legal center. They work and initiate legal processes that are related to Roma issues, and they also provide legal educational services. Next to him is Sergen, who is a representative from Turkey, and he's a PhD candidate and in Romani studies with an extensive experience in environmental justice issues. Also online we have Florin from Romania, who comes from Policy Center for Roma and Minority. That center mainly deals with social inclusion and implements sustainable education for children, providing safe and secure spaces for education. And we will also have representatives of International Harvard Human Rights Clinic. Scarlett and Anna were supposed to join us. I'm not sure if they're online. And they're the one who did the research that was mentioned in the previous panel related to the accountability of the UN related to lead poisoning of Roma communities here in Kosovo. So thank you again, everybody, for coming. This panel discussion will somehow complement the first one, and we will delve deeper into some specific cases from the region and from the wider region as well. And we will try to answer some remaining questions and just to identify some patterns, and most importantly, what can be done in this field. So I would now invite Franz to start with his short presentation. So at the beginning, we will have a short presentation of specific cases that our speakers chose as the ones that depict the situation the best, the most relevant ones. And then we will come to questions. And of course, I always invite the audience to ask questions, but that will be at the Q&A session at the end. So Franz, please, you can start with your presentation.
Hi to everyone.
Greetings all, my friends of Terinade. Greetings all, my name is Franz Terihati, lawyer by trade, and at the same time director of the Center for Legal Empowerment that exercises its activity in Albania. The center is a new center that was established a year ago, whereas our activities as a group of lawyers hired within a project of society in Albania started as back as 2016. Initially, first of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation to participate in this activity, and I'm truly honored to speak in front of you, who are also a very powerful agent of change in the fields where you exercise your activity. The two instances, the cases that I will be speaking about, are related to cases which convey two problems of the Roma community in Tirana and Pogradec. The first case is the case from 2016, where about 40 families of Roma Egyptian communities in Selida area in Tirana were informed suddenly that their apartments will be demolished because a public infrastructure unit will be installed there. All the residents of that area painstakingly built their settlement there during the 85-90s, but themselves as well as the state lacked the documents to validate the time when the apartments were constructed and to be able to recognize their right to these apartments. All of these settlers had applied to have their title recognized, but it had been prior to 2 years of this activity that the state has not taken any steps towards legalizing these apartments. And all of a sudden, without informing them whether they were qualified or not for the legalization of said apartments, no positive or the negative answer provided to them, they suddenly found themselves faced with the construction inspectorate and excavators, where in a 2-day action they started to demolish their apartments. What we did initially during these 2-3 days of this action, the group of activists that had worked on this case undertook all the required steps to advocate by inviting various civil society organizations, embassy representatives of the assembly, by working towards not permitting these apartments to be demolished without a just compensation for all the residents. What happened is that the apartments were demolished, as you can follow. As you can see in the background, they were demolished. All the families were left out on the street, and their entire investment, with all of their efforts that they used to construct these, were brought down in front of their eyes. And quite a few of them couldn't even actually remove their belongings. They were left within the apartments. And they had lost everything that they have built, and without recognizing their right to be settled somewhere else for the 2 years. We followed the case of 3 families. The legal proceedings began in 2016 in this regard, and at the second point in time in presentation I will show you the results of these legal proceedings. An additional case that I would like to introduce is the case of an apartment, of a building in Pokrades. This is a different city in Albania, where 40 families was settled there in the 90s to live in the facility of a former hotel that was installed there. They all the 40 families had the documents proving the time of possession of holding that apartment. But the title holder for the facility was the state. Despite being there for 30 years, the state suddenly took a step for this apartment, this building that the families resided in, to sell this through a private auction to a private entity, and by doing so these 40 families would have no place to shelter, but they would be left out on the street under open skies. What happened in this case is what we did is that we collected the documents together with the activists that helps us in this instance to pursue this case, as well as address this case to the courts, submitting initially a request for a temporary provisional protection that until such time that the legal proceedings are concluded through a final judgment for the dispute, to have these provisionary steps and the residents to stay in that building. And at the end of the process, we sought that they would be recognized and be title holders on these buildings based on possession. Since they were in possession of the same over 20 years, this made them de facto owners. This is a brief description of the cases, and any more detailed questions that you might have about the results of the legal proceedings, I will provide them later on.
Thank you. Takes a while. Okay. Okay, Sorry for that. I would now invite Sergen to talk about his cases that he have prepared. He also has a presentation, as I understood. Yeah. Please.
I couldn't see my presentation.
Just a second, they're fixing it.
Okay, it worked. Hi everyone, thanks for the opportunity to be here to share our results. My research topic today is Roma environmental injustice in Turkey. Before explaining this, I would like to draw your attention into the environmental injustice cases in Europe. At the global level, Roma people are facing lots of social injustice, which led to the environmental injustice. Unequal distribution of the environmental harms and benefits in Europe especially causes lots of serious health issues. And we know from the ERGA reports and another research that there is a 10 years life difference between the Roma and non-Roma. I mean, we are living less than 10 years if we compare it with the non-Roma because of the environmental degradation and factors. But I would like to ask that we know something about Europe, but what we know about Turkey related to environmental injustice? Actually, nothing. We don't know anything because there is no any research. And today I am going to talk about Turkey. And Turkey is a big country, and more than 6 million Roma people are living in the Turkey, which are divided into the three different groups, Rom, Dom, Lom. And my research areas including Rom people who are living in the west part of Turkey and Dom people who are living in the south part of Turkey. And in the next slides, and the end of the slides, I would like to also mention two different cases related to Dom groups who are living in the Lebanon and Jordan. Now I would like to start with the first slide. Here is the map, and it is I couldn't see right now. Yeah, here is the map, and first case from the Çorlu Hıdra settlement. This is the Çorlu stream, which is the most polluted stream in the Turkey, and it flows sometimes blue, sometimes red. And Roma people are living next to the Turkey's most polluted river, and have a risk lots of serious health issues also. And Çorlu stream connects to the Ergene River here. And also, Ergene River are becoming the most polluted river in Turkey. If you look at the bigger perspective, in 1918s, more than 3,000 factories were built next to the Ergene River, and they are discharging their industrial waste into the river. And also, Ergene River connects to the Meriç River. Pollution is like a circle, and there are so many settlements in the polluted river beds. Some of are here, which is Aşşoğlu settlement, and another is Yıldırım Beyazıt settlement. When we talk to people who are living in the Meriç River beds, they say that Roma people have to drinking water by polluted Ergene River, and they have to cook with that water, and they have to bottle their children with that water because they don't have any economic opportunity to protect themselves from the environmental degradation. And if you look at another case from the Ergene River bed, people say that we are losing our population and becoming unemployment. When we ask them why, they say that because of the Ergene River pollution, agricultural activities in that region has been decreased. And when we look at the population data of town, it can be also seen in the population data of town. The population data of town has been decreased by 18% in 70 years, which is a more than 1 year, which is 1% in a year actually. And another findings also could be, according to research, Ergene River pollution spreads everywhere. We can see heavy metal pollution spreads the groundwater sources, soil, plants, and human as well. According to heavy metal calculation, on the human bodies, they found heavy metals. And when we approach the river, the heavy metal has been rising, and cancer rate has been rising. According to another research, say that Ergene River pollution puts 90% of its habitat to cancer risk. And I would like to ask that who will be first affected from the pollution? Of course, the Roma people who are working as an agricultural worker in that region. And also another findings could be becoming visible with the chemical river. There is a conflict between there is a conflict in that region between the pollution and identity, because pollution gain identity in that region. Our participants say that if you ask the Gajos where is the Roma neighborhood is, they will say that immediately they are living in the near to the polluted river. And also accessing to clean water sources and health issues are common in that region. And especially if you look at the health issues, we can say that asthma and bronchitis are common. And also there are some kind of traditional days like a hidrellens. The people, Roma people are going to the river and collecting water from it. And here another case from the Tekirdağ Selim Pasha, and you can see in the industrial zone, and Roma people are living in the industrial zone. And if you look at the air calculation report of Turkey, this is the most polluted industrial zone in Turkey. And according to air calculation reports, more than 25% of the deaths were caused by the air pollution. So who will first affect again in those people who are living in the industrial zone? And so are we including in the statistic? Yes, we are including, and I will explain in the next slides. This is also Tekirdağ, and this is the living space for the people, and another one is the industrial zone. Roma people are living in the industrial zone again, in another case. And what I would like to say that it is my personal story. This is the textile factories. It is my father's home. I lost my father because of the lung cancer. I think that there is a link between my father's issues and environmental integration in that region, but I can't say that it is 100% related to this topic. And here is the port from the Sakarya Karasu for the ships, and here is the also solid waste treatment plant. And the yellow one is industrial zone, and Roma people are living center of them. And when we went to field side, we can see also the port in the Roma settlement is highlighted with the right side of the plant with the arrows. And more than 115 Roma households are living there without having any clean energy and water. Energy poverty is a big issue there, because a couple months ago there was a fire in the tent, and hopefully Roma people are safe, they escaped from the fire. But government gave them just 100 euros to fix their tents, and someone from the tent said that, can I buy a house with the 100 euros? It shows us political lack of the political recognition and also procedural injustice. And another picture from the also Urla, which is a touristical place in Turkey, and other pictures also are in the Urla, in Roma settlement. I would like to ask that who has benefited from the environment and who has suffered as a result of it? Also, almost 100 Roma households are living in this settlement next to the Turkish most beautiful touristical center without having any electricity. And you can see in the right side of the slide that pumping system are not working very well. And when it rains, the solid waste is coming in front of the tents. And of course, this neighborhood is also in the industrial zone. I'm going very fast, sorry for that. And in another case from the Kocaeli, Kandıra neighborhoods, children are playing in toxic environment because there is no any public sewerage system in that area, and the wastes are everywhere. And I am passing to another case also from the Turkey, Yeni Mahalle. Roma neighborhoods is next to the solid waste factory for more than 21 years. Someone from the settlement said that we have been living exactly in garbage for more than 21 years, and there is no any political recognition yet for this case. And there was a neighborhood in Turkey which was built by the tent and next to the skyscrapers and third bridge of Turkey. The people were living there without having electricity and clean water sources. Something happened in 2018. 18 households have received house from the local government. It could be a good example of that. And now we are passing to the DOM cases. Here are the DOM cases, and I will immediately say the two cases related to Lebanon and Jordan. DOMs are nomadic Roma groups, especially in that case, working with as an agricultural worker, and they are during the summertime they are starting to migrate through the Euphrates zone and set up their tents next to the zone. And they have a problem related to accessing clean water sources because they collect water from the Euphrates zone or next to the rivers. It is known that similar group descending to the south part of Turkey and moved to the Lebanon and Jordan. And Dom peoples living in the Lebanon, they live there because the Lebanon has the vicinity of the fertile Bekaa Valley to maintain their seasonal jobs here. And another pictures also from the Jordan. Dom groups Jordan are experiencing accessing the clean water sources again. And we are coming to the end. Issues could be ecological issues, water and soil pollution, decreased agricultural activities, and food insecurity and health issues. And problem definition could be conflicts between the pollution and identity because our landscape is invisible and our also invisible community maybe. And segregation and lack of the political and scholar attention, lack of the social injustice. What I want to say at the end of my presentation say that Roma people see themselves as victims of the environmental discrimination, which is legacy of the social discrimination. We cannot separate them them actually. Unequal distribution, lack of the recognition, and income balance occurred these presentation cases. And recommendation also, more research should be done, and it could be the qualitative and quantitative research, and also we should have immediately plans for the Roma people in Turkey. And I would like to again thank you for listening to me and for your attention. And what I want to say that we need support as a Roma activist in Turkey to do more research related to environmental injustice. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Just please turn off the mic. Thank you very much for the detailed presentation. You covered all the aspects that I planned to cover through questions. Never mind. I would now like to invite Florin, who is with us online, coming from Romania, to talk about what is the situation there. And I know that he will also talk about Patarat, the biggest and yes, the most followed case in Romania. Thank you. Please.
Hello. Can you hear me? Everything okay?
Yes, we can.
I have a PPT presentation. Let me see if I can share it. Can you see it now?
No.
I think it's loading.
Okay.
It shows here it's loading, but probably it's taking some time. So.
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm sorry I cannot be with you in person, but I'm very glad that you deal with this topic, which is not an easy topic. And I'm very happy the way you designed it. I mean, a lot of room for questions because we need a lot of debate on this topic. There are various types of environmental racism and injustice. So instead of presenting just one case, I thought I would go briefly in 3 or 4 cases that are representative for the type of discrimination in Romania. The picture you see here is all about Patarut, and here also Patarat is very famous for people living in the garbage pit and near the garbage pit. It's a historical community. It's actually made of 3 communities. The first one is started around 1960s, and the last one started to develop around 2012 something. So one community I'd like to present more here because it's been a lot of development on that community. They have been evicted from the center of the cities, and then they were moved near the garbage pit. And they sue the municipality, and they proved right. I mean, the court said it was an illegal eviction and they should be moved from there. So 2 years ago, I think, some of them managed to move due to a project, and they were relocated in other localities on the margins of this city. So part of the problem is solved, but still the other 2 communities remain. Some very important elements for this case, it's a historic discrimination. It's illegal. The garbage pit is illegal, has been declared illegal, it should be closed. The communities living there are illegal. And one common issue is a negative attitude of the municipality, in the sense that for, I don't know, 60 years, not very much development has been taking place there. Just moving briefly, what I'm going to do is throw some ideas here and try to summarize them at the end and make room for discussion later. Another community is Roșia Montana, and here it's about floods. You see on the left side, it's a very abrupt hill. Yeah, then comes a railway. Then comes the housing. Then a little bit, very small, it's a protection wall. Then it's the toilets, and then it's the river. So this is how people live, and I'll show you here some more pictures. This is a railway. It's a historic railway. There are around 700 people living there. It's also a historic community. It started with 3-4 houses like 100 years ago. And then they keep added in the 50s and 60s. A very, very small part of this community is actually legal. It's a village that is widespread. For example, the city hall is 10 kilometers on the hills in there. There is multiple danger. As you saw in the previous, you have a hill, and when you have heavy rains, all the water comes down and destroys the houses. Or another possibility is that the river gets bigger and bigger and destroys the houses on the other part. Of course, the community is extending, and what they do is actually dig in the hill for making room for new houses, which of course it's a real danger because a hill can collapse. Okay, here you see the river and the toilets. And here you have the municipality build a protection wall, but it's only 1 meter, 1.5 meters, which doesn't protect very much. I mean, last year there were some serious floods, and every time it rains heavily, there is water for 1.5 meters, and it's houses are destroyed, and people's life are in danger. There is a bridge, there is a railway, and these are historic monuments. Actually, the whole locality is on the list of UNESCO as a historic. That's why intervening in any way in this locality is extremely difficult. Now another case is Miercurea Ciuc, where it started back in 2005 when the shacks of Roma people were on fire and they were removed on the margins of the city, but exactly near the wastewaters plant. So when I've been there in 2005, it was very hard to do research, because if you stay there for more than an hour, your lungs hurt and so on. So it's I went back this year just to see that from the 2005 some more houses. These houses that you see, like 5-7 houses, are new in this locality, and this is the old development. Actually, it's only shacks. The municipality allowed them because the shacks are already very old, and basically it were containers. Okay, it's gone. My presentation is gone. So it was containers. Basically bad living conditions and extreme poverty here. And what I'm going to end with putting on the table some elements. The first element is history. And we have to know the history of discrimination and the history of the land. The second element is legal. Many of these communities are lacking papers on the land, and it affects very much the security of tenure. And the last element is a social element, because you have a history, you have some economic elements in the story, because you don't, for example, you don't have many enterprises or many chances for these people to get integrated in the society. Okay, thank you very much. That was very briefly my presentation, and can't wait for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Florin. Now I would like to ask a question to Sergen, because he was the first one to mention it. When we have established what has been going on in the field for so many years, but this is the discussions just now sparked a bit and drew attention. When we are talking about an issue, it is very important to look into the roots of the causes, to understand the issues better, and then to learn how to potentially bring a solution to the table. So what I would like to ask is, you mentioned that this is a legacy of social discrimination. There's also external factors that have speeded up this processes, such as industrialization, modernization, different priorities of different governments of countries. So could we potentially argue that the unfavorable position, taking into account the social and economic position of the Roma communities, actually was an enabling factor for the environmental discrimination that the community is suffering now? But also I would like to hear, how is the environmental discrimination they're suffering now affecting the other aspects, so the social, economical, mental health, and everything else. So it seems that it is a vicious circle, that it is very hard to get out of it because everything is interlinked and intertwined. So this is only one argument more how that we have to look at these issues as a whole and not to isolate things. So when we're talking about issues, it has to be as a whole.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for the question. Actually, my argument is the social injustice. And yes, there is some kind of things which are especially affecting this social injustice and creating the environmental injustice in Turkey. For example, in 1924, there was a population exchange between the Greeks and Turkey. At that time, Roma people came from the Greek, and they were especially sent to the Ergene Basin and another regions that Turkish government, the Turkish policy wants to have a agricultural revolution. I mean that it is related to that point because in 1946 there was a how can I say, soil sharing for the people. Everyone had the soil for the farming, but Roma people couldn't reach this area, and they seen as an agricultural worker, just not having the place for the products and etc. I think that these kind of things create the environmental injustice issue also. And if you look at the İskan law in Turkey, which is not right now legal because they already how can I say, delayed this law, I will say that, in 2006, I mean. Yeah, there are kind of factors.
Thank you. I see that a representative from International Harvard Clinic for Human Rights is online. Scarlett. Okay. Thank you for joining us. The report and the case that you've investigated in the report was mentioned in the previous session. So I think everybody in the audience is acquainted with what exactly happened in terms of the facts. But what I would like to hear from you is just to briefly go through the process of actually getting legal remedies, because it was, as I understood, it was very challenging to get the Human Rights Advisory Panel even established. And how did the process go? Were there any hinderings? And before we go to the question of accountability, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me today. It is 6 a.m. here on the East Coast of Harvard, so it is very early, but so happy to join you all. We just actually came back from Kosovo and launching this report, and so we had a lot of activity with the community members. And we're happy to share again this years-long journey of mediation from the UN for the Roma communities. So happy to address your question on what has remedies here. And so, once case was established that the communities were affected, the UN sent back the victims back and forth between Prishtina and New York. In 2006, after victims in the UN's Office of Legal Affairs, which is the OLA, UNMIC created the Human Rights Advisory Panel, which is HRAP for short, which is the independent body to determine UNMIC's responsibility for wrongdoing in Kosovo. So an independent body for finding wrongdoing. But we found that, and our report concludes that the UN denied justice to the Roma communities who were afflicted by lead poisoning almost at every turn in this process for years. Just to summarize a couple of the ordeals that they went through. In September 2008, UNMIC asserted that HRAP was barred from having the case while claims were pending at the OLA. And in 2008, UNMIC charged and changed HRAP's rules, making it incredibly hard for the victims and the advocates to navigate this change abruptly. In 2011, OLA, the Legal Affairs Office, of course, dismissed the claims as non-receivable. And so HRAP eventually reopened the case over UNMIC's objections in 2012, and in 2016, which was the big case, UNMIC versus HRAP. HRAP found UNMIC responsible for the tragedies that happened in the camps. And again, because this was so huge, I'd like to just re-emphasize the point. HRAP, the independent body of the UN, did find wrongdoing of the UN, and they decided that the UNMIC had violated the human rights of Roma communities in Mitrovica on the basis of racial bias and prejudice. And then they had issued the following recommendations, right? They acknowledged that, one, UN should acknowledge and provide a public apology to the victims and their families. And then they also recommended adequate compensation for the injuries that they had incurred as a result of being in the camps. And of course, they wanted to make sure that these events don't happen again in other UN facility camps. But again, as the report emphasizes, and as the community members have experienced, the UN has failed to implement its own panel's recommendations, its own internal recommendations to deliver justice to the Roma communities. And that's something that we hope to bring attention to by this report. UNMIC's response on the ground has been expressing moral regret over the series of events. They've expressed regret regarding the adverse health conditions suffered by the victims, but they say that UNMIC is not in a position to refer to the panel's recommendations for institutions in regard to the appropriate actions. They urge the United Nations and other authorities to protect and promote the rights of Kosovo-based Roma communities, but at the same time, they were unable to formally implement the recommendations as issued by HRAP. In 2017, there was a change in the administration, as you know, in the UN. And the statement issued on this issue specifically by the Secretary General's office was that they wish to express the organization's profound regret for the suffering endured by the ID camps. But again, this doesn't exactly imbue the UN with specific legal responsibility, which was the key point. The UN had expressed some sort of moral regret, but did not take legal responsibility, thus not mandating member states to contribute to the suffering of, remediating the suffering, of Roma communities. And that was the key point, even though that the UN had, through its internal accountability mechanisms, found wrongdoing in its camps, they were unable to meet the recommendations as issued by the accountability mechanism and continue to express moral regret, but was not able to take the necessary steps to remediate the wrongs. And the following steps was that the Secretary General, the previous Secretary General, issued a non-mandatory trust fund, which has been non-contributed to, except for one small contribution by a member state. Otherwise, it's been non-functional. And one of the recommendations in this report is that, one, we have to make sure that it is reformed and to make sure that it is going to the communities that are directly afflicted. One of the issues that we found with this trust fund is that, one, of course, it's not being contributed to because it's on a non-mandatory basis, but two, it's being distributed to, or the design of the trust fund was that it was going to go to all Roma communities for the betterment of Roma communities, as opposed to directly to the victims themselves. And so we're urging member states as well as the UN to ensure that the reform of the trust fund ensure that specific measures be taken to remediate the specific harms endured by the people of the camps. And that's the legal remedies and the legal procedures right now that we're looking at, and happy to answer any questions as they arise.
Thank you. I immediately have a follow-up question. A question was brought up in the previous panel as for, is there any space? Have you came up? You cannot hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Have you heard what I've said? No?
No, unfortunately,
okay.
no.
Okay, never mind. I'll repeat. So a question came up in the previous panel discussion, and it was about like, did any solutions or any legal mechanisms left came across while you were doing your report? Is there any other possibility now to call UN to actually implement the recommendations and, of course, to prevent these cases to happen in the future, except for having like these non-binding recommendations and urging and pushing them through these other mechanisms? But is there maybe a legal mechanism left? I know that there were some discussions about the immunity of the UN, specifically in the Kosovo case, but in general, is there any possibility left, maybe in legal, like academia or anywhere, that has been discussed potentially to bring UN to the court?
Part of the frustrating part about this case is that we and the advocates within this journey have really exhausted all internal and external accountability mechanisms. And that's what we're trying to bring attention to, right? That in the end, we have tried at all costs and all efforts to explore all legal, mandatory binding mechanisms through the UN and have failed, even though we followed every single rule, and all of the advocates and community members have tried to do so. So to answer your question, right now we don't see a legally binding mechanism that we could explore per the UN's existing mechanisms for accountability. So that's why our focus is gathering a coalition of member states who will urge this issue in front of the Secretary General and the Security Council to move the issue forward and navigate that space between, as you said, non-binding measures of advocacy and coalition building, but also, again, making sure that member states are aware of the situation, and as the Security Council prepares to transition, having this issue briefed in front of them, and as we're preparing to go to New York and doing more advocacy trips on this issue to try and navigate that space between informal mechanisms and formal mechanisms at the UN through member states championing this issue, as opposed to just civil society pushing this issue forward.
Thank you. While we're talking about legal remedies, I also have a question. Do you hear me? Okay. I also have a question for Franz and also for Florin. I wanted to ask you about the legal actions you have brought in your cases. What were the outcomes? And if you had some decisions or judgments brought in your favor, would you say that it is the right journey, the right path, steps to undertake in the future? And had it made any progress in the long run? So do you see it as an effective and efficient way of combating environmental discrimination in your own country?
In relation to three cases which I refer to in Tirana, where three families had their shelters destroyed and did not get compensation, we referred it to the courts. We were very skeptical to start with because the three families did not have any documentation proving their ownership or when they built their houses. But what we were claiming is that the authorities had to prove themselves when these buildings had actually been built. And in the end, three of these lawsuits, two of which we lost initially in the first step, then we went to an appeals court and they were brought to retrial again. So in the three decisions taken by the courts, our claims for compensations were accepted. The courts found that the local authorities had infringed upon the rights of ownership and the right to compensation because they did not conduct any administrative procedure or administrative action to conduct an expertise in the field to determine when the construction was made, or in their official communication they did not provide any information at all on when the buildings were actually built. So on the day when the demolition was done, we sent private experts who conducted an evaluation and made an expertise, and they determined that these buildings were built before 1991, and this was a criteria in law for them to get ownership. So in 3 of these cases, the courts accepted their right that they were entitled to compensation for both the buildings and the land and moral damages, because damages were also at that aspect. They were removed from their homes forcefully. One family was compensated with about 30,000 euros, and 2 other families with about 50,000 euros each. The decisions were not enforced so far yet, because the state has appealed the decision, so we are awaiting a decision of the appeals court. But we did not stop here. In addition to following these cases in court, we continued following up on our cases to change legislation also. So the procedures to be more clear as part of the law. So first, we don't have such a repeat of such cases in the future, that even if we are dealing with people who don't have ownership papers, they would not be removed forcefully. So the changes in the law subsequent to this reflect better standards, because they allow families a procedure, a longer period of time to find a solution if they are relocated. And it obliges the state to find alternative temporary alternative shelter in the intermediary period if an eviction has to be done. So despite the fact that a person might have documentation or not, which proves the time of the building being constructed, it is enough for them to be in a certain building, or it makes it mandatory for the state for them to compensate them if we're talking about construction of infrastructure, and if there are no plan for infrastructure, they need to legalize that building if it was built before 2009. So all of these buildings now are in the process of legalization because the law has been changed. So in addition to litigation, we continued with advocacy to change the laws on the right to shelter, and the law on removal. So Pogradec was another case where it used to be a hotel before. Initially, the court accepted the claim to suspend the procedure of the sale of the building through trying to privatize the building. So what happened is that this decision of the court of the first was appealed, but the appeal court also upheld the decision of the basic court. And what happened is that the court accepted this, our claim, to recognize them as owners. So they were recognized as owners also in this building. So now we are expecting the final decision of the appeals court, which would uphold the decision of the base court. They would become legal owners of their flats. Knowing that in Albania such legal processes takes time because the judiciary has difficulties because of the vetting process, we have a group of activists working on the issue, being supported by lawyers. They have started a campaign of advocacy in Pogradec, which is in charge of the area, and they are advocating for that irrespective of how the outcome of the legal proceedings will come, that the municipality should award them the right to ownership, so that in the end they would be recognized with ownership of that area.
Thank you. Florian, please, you can take the floor now.
Um, I'm not a lawyer, so I have the luxury of looking at this question from the very practical point of view. So it's for sure we need this litigation, but we need to strengthen this kind of process. And the second idea is that we need support, meanwhile, for the families. Why? Because this kind of process takes years. Yeah? And in these years, I mean, it takes very little for your health to be damaged very much. So you can also die in 5 years or 10 years until they reach a decision. So from the practical point of view, it's sometimes it's not very much in the favor of the Roma living there. That's why I think that the first decision is to take the people living in the garbage pit or on landfills or something and remove them, relocate them. That's why we need programs for relocation immediately when this happens or when it is identified. And I'll just give you an example from Miercureaciuc. As I said, in 2005, they moved there near the waste management plant, and they sued. Yeah, and it took years for the national and international legislation to come and to get a final decision. And the final decision was that the municipality was fined with 2,000 euro. That's not a lot for a municipality. And if you have no other chance, if you have no other place to put these people, instead of building 20 houses that will cost you a lot, you prefer to pay a fine of 2,000 euro. Yeah, it's very practical. And if you have to relocate them, what municipality usually do here in Romania is that they relocate them in containers, which is not actually proper living condition. It's better than the garbage pit, but it's not proper living condition. So we need to strengthen the action and to come with supportive action for improving the housing situation of these people.
Thank you. That brings us to the last question from my side, and then I will open the Q&A from the audience. What, very traditional question for every panel discussion, what are the next steps? What do you see that is needed in the near future to combat environmental discrimination? We can have a short round and then open the floor. You can start, or Sergen.
The next step, I think it depends on which country are you living. In Turkey, we need more data right now to say something related to environmental justice and to do something. For example, a couple months ago, we made a strategy plan as a Roma NGOs, and we try to put environmental injustice issue in the strategy plan. We know something about the education and health and etc. And we now put this we now put environmental injustice issues in the strategy plan, which we made it, and also we went to the politicians. And we say that, yeah, this is our plans, and you are also trying to right now preparing the national plan for the Roma in Turkey, and you should at this point, and as a next step could be we should develop maybe specific plan for the environmental injustice. Not. I think that it depends on the also. The settlement, we cannot solve such a big issues with just one plan, one strategy plan. And also, the issues are changing by settlement to settlement, not just a city or country. And we should have also local strategy plan.
Yeah. Please, Franz.
What I see as very important is related to, in my opinion, empowerment, both in advocacy and knowledge, legal knowledge as well as first of all to understand the problems in existence and then the legal solution for those problems the communities themselves or certain members of those communities would have. And what is also extremely important in justice, in example in Albania, we have both at our center and other centers, we've attempted to paralegals. Paralegals are a great instrument, great tool to further educate the community on their rights, for the paralegals to help the communities if they have any certain issues and to serve as a connecting bridge between the community and the lawyers or the justice community in instances where a more specialized legal knowledge is if required. I see very important the communities themselves need to strengthen and to be empowered, and this can be done through initial trainings or trainings, ongoing continuous trainings, experience exchanges that the paralegals might have amongst themselves as well as the communication that they might have as well. So I see it as very important to legal empowerment and their capabilities in advocating, and by being such an empowered, strengthened community, having members of the community that are empowered, the community in itself incrementally will be empowered to face any further challenges they might have.
Yes, definitely, in order to increase local participation and meaningful participation and dialogue. I would now ask Scarlett and Florian very quickly, so the last interventions are super short, so we have at least 15 minutes for questions. Scarlett, you can go first, please. Sorry, we don't hear you. Okay, try again.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, we hear you now. Thank you.
Panelists, it's so important and make sure that civil society and the communities and are involved in this. We're the ones who are directly with the community members who are affected, and we cannot ever let this connection be severed nor weakened. I think the other big point, just specific to our work, is holding for the purposes of environmental justice, especially as it continues to be a big issue in the global south and other countries outside of the typical Western powers. It's important to stress the role of law and for accountability mechanisms to be, especially with powerful entities like the UN, making sure that inserting through different mechanisms such as coalition building, as well as advocacy meetings with the states to ensure that these things don't happen to not just Roma communities, but especially Roma communities but communities in the future who will be subject to other remediation measures to ensure that they have mechanisms for pursuing justice and remediation.
Thank you. And Florian, the last intervention.
Yeah. So to be very brief, I think we need to make sure that the existing legislation is enforced at local level and to find mechanism to enforce it, because I'm sure in every country it is illegal to live on the riverbank or on infested soil. So we just need to apply the local legislation, see why we don't do this. And second, I think we need more communication on this topic, be it studies, be it experience exchange or whatever, because slowly we need to build a stronger community that is talking about this at national and international level.
Very much to all speakers. Now we have some time for questions from the audience. We have one in the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Andor Rimush, and I just would like to ask Florian, Because I think Romania is benefiting from the EU funds quite extensively. And what do you think actually, what the EU funds can do actually to tackle these questions, what you just mentioned? Because there are different questions like legal questions, social inclusion, housing, and it's all of these things actually should be part of the EU funds programs. And I don't see very well actually the EU funds are really tackling these questions in Romania. Maybe I'm wrong. Just can you help us actually what's happening?
You are right, Andor. And I think it takes a very smart and willing municipality to do this, because as you know, the European funds just come for housing, for environment, and for other topics. So if you know that you have a situation where you have to relocate the Roma, then you apply for funds for building social housing, and then you remove them. Or that's something that we don't frequently do, is to relate to the Just Transition Fund and Just Transition mechanisms at the level of the European Union. So it's true, the EU funds have not been very effective in this issue, and I hope we're going to have the chance to talk about this more to the next session. But it's up to the municipality and up to us to see how we can access more effectively this kind of funds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Does anybody maybe want to share some cases from their local communities? Yes, please.
All right, I'm Besnik, and I have a question for Franz. He said that there are 3 cases that have been sent to the court, unless we still don't have a final verdict. But I just would like to know, are there any cases that have been submitted to the court, or there are just 3 and other families just will stay as they are right now?
Won the 3 cases at the first instance court, and we're waiting for the decision of the Court of Appeal. I don't know if I'm clear.
I was saying, are there other cases for other families that have been?
There are other 8 cases for other families, but they are not from Roma communities.
No, okay. Thank you.
Hello, I have a question for the Sergen actually, and Sergen mentioned a lot of examples from Turkey, but I know, as I can guess, more than these cases in Turkey have this kind of things. But I really would like to ask to you, and do you know, or do we have any quantitative data or research about how many Roma people or neighborhoods exposed to it? Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Fatosh. We are working in Turkey with the Fatosh in the same organization, and also she helped me to collect data from these environmental cases in Turkey. We actually don't have any qualitative data right now in Turkey. Especially, I can't say the number because there is no. But as another step, we are also planning to have quantitative data and numbers, because especially to affect the politician, the numbers is a very good way, and they are looking just the numbers, and they don't care generally about the people who are living and who are suffering there, and I think that in my opinion, people thought is very important. And when you ask something, when you ask someone what is the issue in there, and he or she can say something about it, and there is something we should have qualitative data to especially affect the politician, but we can also there is something that we cannot see the community thoughts from these qualitative data or numbers. But as another step, we are planning to do that. Thank you.
We also had one question in the back.
Greetings coming from the Roma community. Franz is the lawyer that has been supporting us. We have 3 cases, not 3, but there might be additional 8. We are still in the process with the appeals court, but I would like to know how much longer is this going to take, because it's been 8 years that we have been in this situation, and I don't know how long this situation, this condition of ours will continue. The point is that even in migration, the Roma community, when they present what we have suffered, lived through, this is disregarded, not taken into consideration in relation to housing and shelter. So I would like simply to know, how long is this going to take? Thank you.
I'm so sorry if it wasn't my turn to speak. My deepest condolences for your efforts, and I just wanted to say that we hear you and everything that you have been through, and hope that our work moves your efforts forward as well. In terms of the timeline, in terms of our experiences, it depends on, like I said, the internal mechanisms of the UN really deciding the timeline, and it can, as you said, stretch beyond years and years. All we can do, I think, from our end of civil society is push the effort and the issue forward in order to try and bring attention to this, so that they have pressure on the issue to try and fast track these efforts. And that's definitely what we're trying to do in our advocacy meetings in New York. And so we'll be sure to bring the issue up and to bring attention to the matter there.
So we have presented 3 requests to the Court of Appeal, and we have requested to speed the process, but we haven't a decision yet for the appeal court. And it's not in our hands when the Court of Appeal is going to appoint a hearing session for that.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? One more.
Hello, I'm Denis from Macedonia. My question is addressed mostly to the Professor Beatrice, but everybody is welcome to answer it if you have some good answer. As we saw, Roma people are facing the same issues, especially about their living environment all over the Europe, I can say. So, as we saw, they are living in very bad conditions without approach to infrastructure goods or any kind of services. So we cannot expect from them to advocate themselves and to fight for their rights. So they need help from the educated members of the community and also from the stakeholders, from the government mostly, because they have budget and they have laws and everything. So my question is, I know there is no one and a simple solution, but does any university or some experts have made some projects or some proposals how to solve these issues and overcome during, I know it takes time, it's not a 1-year solution, but or some guidelines, mostly legally, or actions also, action plans, how to solve all these issues around Europe, because Romas are mostly, how to say, okay, because I want to say, to simplify, So we need to have some tools in our hands as activists to give it to the government and to ask them what to do to solve these problems. I know, I will repeat myself, there is not one big solution, but we need some guidelines because we cannot, we need tools to approach to the government, to ask for help, because as we saw, every country has, or every issue, case have its own approach, but individually. I ask for some, as I can say, some guideline or something. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a disclaimer that Scarlett is here instead of Beatrice, but Scarlett, please, if you can answer this question.
Well, of course. I think your concerns are really well, they're heard and they're appreciated because you speak to a truth about our efforts, which is that it is very individual. It's on a case-by-case basis. And as you said, a comprehensive guideline or a collective effort across universities and civil societies would be very much appreciated. I think we're at the beginning stages of this effort. Even though the ordeal of the Roma communities has been so long, I think right now we are trying to build a coalition of not only civil society members, but also member states to try, and again, bring this comprehensive approach to the issue and move the issue forward despite its longevity and getting unresolved. And so I think you're pointing out something that we as a field need to implement, which is, one, getting a coalition of not just like-minded people and like-minded states together, but also putting together some sort of comprehensive approach for guidelines for civil society members to try and collect themselves within their own realms and their own communities to try and, again, move this issue forward in a time-sensitive manner. I think right now, and that's certainly that we can implement ourselves, right? And we really appreciate the feedback. The report in itself issues some recommendations for the UN, but we also think that could be part of our next steps. I think you point out something very important and an important failing in our efforts currently, which is that we need to, again, provide some sort of guidelines and or guidance for other societies and other community members who are invested in this issue to move forward. And I think that's certainly that's something that we can implement going forward. So we appreciate the feedback.
Thank you very much. I think we have come to the end of the panel discussion, so we can conclude. Thanks to the esteemed panelists and for the panelists online. Thank you for your time and for agreeing to participate and share your knowledge. Also, thanks to the participants who stayed with us until the end. Now it's lunchtime, so I invite you all to lunch, and please continue the discussions over lunch if you feel so. Thank you once again.
Lunch is at the first floor. Thank you.